Ms. Debbie Simmons has served on the Round Rock Independent School District for School Health Advisory Council, known as the SHAC. Every school district has one. From January 2015 to October 2013 to October 2014, and now advocates for parents to get involved excuse me, in their local SHACs by posting it at Take Back the SHAC. It's a website you can go to, Take Back the SHAC, on Facebook. Debbie Simmons is a wife, mom, military brat, and one of the most importantly is an Aggie, graduate of Texas University, and mind you, class of '92 like me. Although we didn't know each other there, we were brought together by the will of God, and I want to thank her because a quick note on Debbie is she's the catalyst behind what's happening here today. And I want to thank her for her leadership on that and bring this all together. So please welcome me, Debbie Simmons.
Thank you so much for joining us today. My name is Debbie Simmons. Can you hear me? Yes. My voice is a little erratic today. Thank you to TexasFamily for the invitation today to speak at your event. I served almost 2 years on the Round Rock ISD School Health Advisory Council, also known as the SHAC, as legislated by Texas Education Code 28004. A SHAC is a citizen committee required in every school district. Trustees are required to appoint at least 5 members to the SHAC. The majority of members must be parents of students in the district, and the SHAC must provide advice to the district and assist the district in ensuring that local community values are reflected in the district's health education instruction. This section of code was first written in 1995 to foster parental rights and authority, provide transparency, and strengthen local control and accountability. However, there are loopholes that are exploited by school districts, comprehensive sex education advocates, and the abortion industry. According to Texas Education Code 28004, parents may opt out students without penalty, and parents may file a grievance if a school district does not provide written notice of instruction and provide materials for reasonable public inspection. In 2013, the Round Rock ISD 7th grade opt-out assignment included reading 151 pages, answering 85 questions from the health book, completing 15 workbook pages, and 3 quizzes. These exercises were to be completed in 5 one-hour class periods spent in the library within 1 week in the library as a completion grade, all because I opted my daughter out of human sexuality instruction that week. So students who are opted out that are consistently bullied, they're singled out, and they're penalized by the district and their peers. Too often, parents find out that the opt-out form that they sent to the district was not even honored. What are the consequences when a teacher does not honor an opt-out or penalizes a child with additional work? How should parents respond when their student's teacher calls to pressure them to opt into the instruction? There are no consequences to violating education code, and the grievance process only covers a subsection of that code. In the state of Texas, health is an enrichment subject, and human sexuality instruction is not required. If human sexuality is taught, then schools must present abstinence from sexual activity as the preferred choice of behavior. They must devote more attention to abstinence than to any other behavior. They must emphasize that abstinence from sexual activity is the only method that is 100% effective in preventing pregnancy, STDs, HIV, and the emotional trauma associated with adolescent sexual activity. School districts must direct adolescents to a standard of behavior in which abstinence from sexual activity before marriage is the most effective way to prevent pregnancy, STDs, and HIV. And if instruction on contraception and condoms is included, then districts must teach contraception and condom use in the terms of human use reality rates, not laboratory theoretical rates. So that's actually what the code says. That is our law, but that is not necessarily what's happening in the school districts. During a fall 2012 presentation of a proposed 8th grade contraception unit, a Round Rock ISD trustee proposed that the district tell students the theoretical laboratory rates for condoms of 3% to encourage condom use instead of presenting the human use reality rate of 15% failure rate. She also proposed that condom demonstrations might improve these rates. Not only were the trustees discussing violating Texas Education Code, but they were proposing condom demonstrations in 8th grade classrooms. In 2007, the Texas Freedom Network sent an open records request to all 1,031 school districts in the state of Texas to collect data on the human sexuality instruction and SHAC recommendations. The results were compiled by Dr. David Wiley at Texas State University into a statistical package for social sciences database to track and report the progress for the Texas Freedom Network's SHAC initiative. Next, the results were summarized in a white paper called Just Say Don't Know, alleging that abstinence education is sheer fear and shame-based. Dr. Wiley and the Texas Freedom Network accused school districts of presenting factual errors when they comply with Texas Education Code 28004 requirements for abstinence education and optional contraception instruction. Comprehensive sex education advocates consistently propose that condom efficacy rates be exaggerated to encourage condom use and enable risky sexual activity among adolescents. What are the consequences when a district violates those abstinence requirements? There are none. In 2009, the Texas Freedom Network presented a 1-hour webinar with 44 slides on how to get on a SHAC to advocate change to sex education in schools. In the first half of the webinar, Kathy Miller, the current president of Texas Freedom Network, encourages SHAC initiative members to attend SHAC meetings, find or bring allies, be patient, follow baby steps while getting to your goal for comprehensive sex education. The second half of the webinar is a case study in which a Texas Freedom Network employee got on the Austin ISD SHAC to advocate for the change. And when he got onto the SHAC, he found that they didn't have a sex education committee, so he and his ally created a committee, made recommendations, and they moved that district from being abstinence plus, basically with a sexual risk avoidance program, to a sexual risk reduction program, or otherwise known as comprehensive sex education. In the mid-90s, former Governor Ann Richards' daughter and former president of Planned Parenthood, Cecile Richards, formed the Texas Freedom Network to combat the anti-choice radical policy agenda of the extreme right in Texas. The Texas Freedom Network SHAC initiative is their strategy to equip members to infiltrate SHACs to push comprehensive sex education, thwarting parental input, transparency, and local control. In 2011, the Texas Freedom Network followed up the 2009 white paper with an open records request to the TEA and an updated white paper. Districts that complied with the abstinence promotion policy in the Texas Education Code 28004 were characterized as flawed and ignorant. This time, the case study was San Marcos ISD and the move from Scott and White's Worth the Wait to sexual risk reduction programs, such as big decisions and ETRs draw the line, respect the line. The Texas Freedom Network has maintained their pressure on districts and policymakers through the years to push comprehensive sex education and marginalize any organization or individual that supports abstinence or sexual risk avoidance. In 2016, a sample set of 10 large districts and 138 selected districts were contacted to provide data for the latest white paper, Conspiracy of Silence. The Texas Freedom Network and Dr. David Wiley continue their disdain for abstinence education and neglect to address the consistent and effective public health policy of risk avoidance education. According to the Education Code, districts must provide written notice of instruction and provide materials for reasonable public inspection. Written notice is often buried in the handbook with language out of the Education Code, but very little details on what is actually being provided. Parental notification letters are often floating pieces of paper that may or may not be brought home and may not return successfully. The language used in these notices often neglect to inform parents about the content, the author, and the instructor of the human sexuality class. Lake Travis ISD offers parents the choice between abstinence-based or abstinence plus. The abstinence-based choice lists education code requirements as if those are optional, and then they list the abstinence plus choice, teaching about contraception and disease prevention methods to reduce risks when sexually active, and fails to inform parents that Planned Parenthood is providing that instruction of big decisions. Parents deserve full and fair disclosure of the health curriculum before and after approval by the trustees. Among the Texas Freedom Network's findings, the data showed that districts were violating 28004's requirement for the SHAC to make recommendations to the school district board of trustees on human sexuality instruction. This information should be particularly concerning to parents throughout Texas. Unfortunately, rather than encouraging parental participation, the Texas Freedom Network mocks parents for providing questionable advice and lacking background in health education and medicine. Rather than parents as the first and foremost instructor to their own children to provide the instruction of the character, moral values, and virtues of sex education, the Texas Freedom Network depends on the absence of parents as an opportunity to attend SHAC meetings and make recommendations for permissive and risky sex education programs. After the condom demonstration presentation by Round Rock ISD trustees in 2012, parents discovered that whoever was showing up at the SHAC meetings were granted membership and could create and vote on recommendations. Trustees were elected by the voters. Trustees must review recommendations from the SHAC to determine the instruction. But who decides who is on the SHAC, other than the required 5 trustee-appointed members? Each district is different. A few districts have the trustees appoint all members, but generally, district employees choose the members, or districts allow whoever shows up to join committees, make recommendations, and vote. This summer, plank number 120 was included in the Republican platform, stating the state of Texas should adopt changes to Texas Education Code 28004 to require every member of the SHAC to be appointed by the Board of Trustees, require every school district to post SHAC meeting minutes, full and fair disclosure of the contents of the human sexuality instruction, and propose changes to health education, close loopholes, and expand the grievance process to cover the entire section of 28004. Please support bill language to pass changes recommended in plank number 120 to improve parental authority, district transparency, and SHAC accountability. These improvements will restore power to parents through proper disclosure and escalation processes. Thank you for your time and consideration.
Was that a mouthful?
Yes.
That's turning on a fire hydrant, isn't it?
Yeah.
And I apologize again for our tardiness, because that made Debbie go a little bit faster. But please, if you would, please hold your questions until the end, and just make note, and we'll have some notes back here, some paper, and we'll get it passed out as well, so you can make it do that. Our next speaker.